This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Ames High boys basketball coach Vance Downs. We're going to have an amazing conversation about this year's state championship, coaching in general, and then take some time to walk down memory lane to revisit some of the most storied teams. All right, Vance Downs, thank you for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
So this is, we're 2 weeks out from the night where you and the Ames High team won the state championship. Have you come off that high yet?
I think we've come down a little bit. I think, just being around the school, the kids are still having a great time. They're wearing their hats, and they're still really excited about it, as they should be.
Yeah.
But I think we as coaches have come down a little bit and starting to plan for next year.
Yeah. So when we, especially at the 4A level, the 4A in Iowa, that's the big schools. Boy, you get to that postseason and you get to the state tournament. There's a lot of attention on the state tournament, and it's all played in Des Moines at Wells Fargo, and Ames High was at the top of that news attention, not only going into this season, but especially entering the tournament as the number one seed. You had some high-profile athletes who, are going to go off and play next year. How are you feeling about, just the season as a whole, this particular team? Now that it's all said and done, what does this mean to you and the team? And have you taken some time to reflect on this season yet?
Great question, Eric. I haven't, besides the numbers.
Yeah.
We've tried to crunch the numbers and break down the film. But I haven't really had a whole lot of time to reflect about memories and letting that stuff set in. But I couldn't be happier for the kids.
Yeah.
It was a big goal for them. They got there. Unfortunately, it worked out, and it was not an easy road at all. And I couldn't be happier for the community and the school.
Yeah.
It was a positive shot in the arm. I think everybody feels really good about it.
Yeah.
And from the turnout last night and from the comments and from the feedback we've gotten, I think we're all really proud of this basketball team and proud of our school.
So you can't say this, so I'm going to say it from my lens. I know coaches can't say this, but I mean, Ames was you were the number one team going into this year, and you had some ups and downs, and you certainly had to prove it, and you coached all the way through the season. But going into the tournament as the number one team, how do you manage that? And how do you manage that not only for yourself and the coaching staff, but for the students as well, the students and players? I mean, we're starting to look at the college level. These number one seeded teams are losing, at the college level. And so it's not that everything is just a given going into the season. I know that you don't take that for granted.
No, we have been through this before, so that did help.
Yeah.
From a staff perspective, nice thing is you get to, if you're the number one seed, you don't ever have to change jerseys. So you told the kids we're wearing white all the way through, so there's not going to be a mix up there. But to your point, we just tried to keep things as normal as we possibly could. We knew what we wanted to do from a routine after the sub-state final. We knew what we wanted to do every day. We knew what we wanted to cover. And then when we got into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we wanted to keep it like, hey, we're preparing for a Tuesday game.
Yeah.
And then we knew what we wanted to do from Wednesday to Thursday, and what we wanted to do from Thursday to Friday.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a normalcy with teenage boys. There just has to be.
Yeah.
Or they're not going to be able to focus. And that's what we tried to emphasize.
So this particular team, like I had said, we had, the senior leadership was big for this team. Taman Lipsey is going to be playing at Iowa State next year, was a big part of that. But in many ways, the way this season unfolded, you guys started with defense, or at least that's what it looked like from my perspective. I saw at one point throughout, and this is probably past midway through the season, that you were keeping every team to their lowest point total of the year. Was that a focus of you and your coaching staff, going into this season? Or, how does that come about with defense being it was so prominent and obvious?
Well, Eric, I don't think it was any more of a focus this year than it has been in other years. But we did learn early on that was going to be a big part of our identity, and we had to guard really well. Now, we were very fortunate. We had two elite perimeter defenders. L.A. and Taman are really, really talented in that area, and Corey has been through so many battles with us that he could adjust to the scout well. Devin has been there for years. He could adjust to the scout well, and Travy in that same vein. And then the young people coming off the bench did a terrific job.
Yeah. What is your focus in? So how does practice play out for you throughout the season? And then maybe even towards the end of the season, you're starting to hit your groove. You know you're getting into the postseason. What do practices look like? Is it the same every day or every week? Are you focusing on the same things, or are you making notable adjustments based on what you're seeing in games?
Well, a little bit of both. There's some drills that we're going to do every day because it's just muscle memory. We don't feel if we don't do this, we can't perform that in game time. And then as we break down film and look at numbers and statistical information, we know that there's certain things that we have to adjust to. What we found ourselves as far as an adjustment is spending more time in rebounding the ball. Those drills. And we knew when we lost Taman for that 5-week period that we had to find not a new identity, but we had to have contributions offensively out of kids that weren't outside their personality. And part of what we tried to do was, especially with Corey, with L.A., and a big part with Travy is, hey, we need more offensive rebounds. So we want offensive production, but we can't play out of our individual personalities. So we weren't all of a sudden going to start shooting, twice as many threes, but how can we get offensive production? Offensive rebounds is a big way, and we focused on that in practice. But there's some daily drills that we try to do every day, just for turnover prevention and defense especially.
So this is your 18th year as varsity head coach of Ames High, and I talked a little bit about senior leadership, but you have a pretty long tenured coaching staff as well, coaches who have been part of the Ames High program for a while. How does that play into this season? How valuable is that?
Well, I think it's extremely valuable. I've got Coach Dana Goodwin, who's been with us for 12 years, and Dana really focuses on the defensive part of it. I got Jeff Steinis, who has been here just a little bit, not quite as long, and he focuses on the offense. I've got Andrew Zalaski, who helps with all this administrative work and coaches our 10th graders, and I've got Ryan McGowan, who focuses on our 9th graders and does a great job there. And then we bring in a couple volunteers, and Steve McGraw, who's coached more games than I've won. And, I'm just calling him every night, bouncing things off of him, especially in regards to kids. And then Bruce Verdon, another volunteer that works on individual scouts, on personnel tendencies. And you put that all together, and these guys work great together. They really have good chemistry. I'm just really fortunate, and I think the kids are really fortunate.
Absolutely. Do you find yourself, having just like a lot of nonverbal communication, with your coaching staff? You've done it for so many years together. Everyone kind of knows their role and what they need to do.
Yeah, I think so. And it's worked out really well. And, you wouldn't think that that's important, coaching staff having chemistry. And it really is, because you're always under the clock. And it's not just the 8 minutes in the quarters. It's like, a timeout. How much time do you have? You got to communicate these ideas. Can you do it quickly? Can you do it efficiently? And can you do it clearly with the kids? Halftime, you got 10 minutes. Well, you think 10 minutes is a long time, but by the time you transition to a locker room and you want to be back on the floor at 3, it's not a lot of time. So, you got 7 points on the board. You got guys calculating numbers. You come in, you got Dana saying something specifically to defense. You got Jeff saying something specifically to offense. Final comments, and then you're back on the floor, and it's got to be, effectively communicated to the kids, and clearly, like I said, and hopefully it's the right stuff.
Surrounding yourself with good people is huge. I would imagine that the trust level with this coaching staff is got to be off the charts as well. Even to go as far as to feel comfortable to be able to tell you things that maybe you don't want to hear at any given time as the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it ain't going to do us any good if everybody just agrees with what I say.
Yeah, right.
So everybody I mentioned feel, well, maybe not Ryan McGowan. He's pretty young. But
He'll get there.
Yeah, he will get there. But every one of those guys is not afraid to disagree with what I'm doing or what I have to say, and I think that just helps everything.
Over the course of years, have you had situations, not asking specifics, where you've had to like maybe even check yourself a little bit?
Yeah. I think that's just kind of that.
Yeah.
That happens every season where you just gotta, like you said, check yourself.
Yeah.
And, it's an amped up profession. There's a lot of adrenaline, there's a lot of competitive juices, but then there's a lot of times that you got to be careful.
Yeah. So we're going to get to a little bit of some previous seasons that, you've helped coach. But there was some hype around this team coming into the season. You made it to the state tournament last year. And, people were looking at Ames with a lot of returners from last year coming into this year. Do you think about that at all?
Well, we thought about it in the off season.
Okay.
But when you're into the grind of the season, I don't think you think about it so much. You think about your opponent, what you have to take away, and what you can do against them.
Yeah. So, Taman was, where's he going to go? He announced before the season that, he was going to go to Iowa State. Does that take some pressure off of the season as a whole?
Well, I don't think it necessarily takes any pressure off of this season as a whole. I think it took a significant amount of pressure off of Taman.
Okay.
I've never met a kid that has been highly recruited where when they can finally say, this is where I'm going to go, doesn't feel really good about just getting that responsibility off their back.
Yeah.
Not that, there hadn't been anything negative at all with any of the kids that I've dealt with as far as in that category, but it's just nice to have it done. And I can focus on basketball in this particular team. Yeah.
I've told people this, and I don't know if you think about this. A hallmark of a Vance Downs team is the player's demeanor on the court. And so I've lived in Ames a long time. I've seen teams. I've been in this position. This is my 5th year now. I've been to basketball games, for all of those years. And your players don't complain. They're on the court, they're playing. They don't come. Calls are going to go both ways. That's the nature of the game. And it seems like every team, including the one this season, they put their head down, they go to work, and if you have to work the officials a little bit, that's your job. But they just work hard. Is that something you guys talk about at practice?
Well, we try to.
Yeah.
Before every game, there's a list of reminders offensively and defensively and what we call game management. Mm-hmm. And there's 10 points under each. And those 10 points under game management, at least 5 of them deal with just how to address officials.
Yeah.
How to act before a game, after the game, how to address officials. If you are, really, there's one kid out of the captain group that's supposed to address the officials at all. But if they do, this is how you do it. And we talk about body language.
Yeah.
How one call handled correctly might get you another call.
Okay, yeah.
How one call not handled correctly is for sure not going to get you the next call.
Correct.
And there's so many 50-50 calls in basketball.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying anybody's not above board,
right.
But you want to do everything you possibly can to help yourself win the game. So
when you get to the state tournament, how intense is that run? So for the 4A boys, if it's the final 8 teams, you play on Wednesday, you win, you move on. You play immediately the next day on Thursday. Again, you win and move on like we did this year. You're playing on Friday. So there's 3 games in a row, and these are all you win and move on. The team who loses, they're done for the season. How intense is that for you, the team, the coaching staff? It's got to be nonstop, I would imagine.
It does get intense. Now, fortunately, we've played a number of back-to-backs. So you play Wednesday, you win, you kind of take a moment to exhale before you grab something to eat, and then you're on to the next game. And that back-to-back is kind of a common feeling. The back-to-back-to-back, that's a different creature. And when if you're fortunate enough to win that second game of the tournament, the kids are spent.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking physically necessarily, although there's a piece of that.
Yeah.
But emotionally, there's not a lot left. And I was taught a long time ago, when you get to that last game, it's really about you. It's not about them.
Yeah.
And we've just tried to, when I say them, I'm talking about the opponent.
Yeah.
So when we get to that last game, we try to give them enough time to recover, and then just give them a little bit of information and let them be them in that state championship game.
How much scouting are you able to do on teams that maybe you're not familiar with? We play the metro schools; they're close. Odds are you maybe have played them before, not always, but there's always when you're playing, Cedar Rapids, Council Bluffs. These are teams that maybe you don't see a lot of, or maybe even hear a lot of. They're just in a different part of the state. What type of preparation does that entail?
Well, really, in today's world with Huddle in the Huddle film system, you can get as much as you want. It's just how much volume do you want to deal with?
Right. Yeah.
And usually what we do, if it's like the second game of the tournament, we have a coach out in front working on those possible opponents.
Okay.
And really, you can get what you want. You can call who you want.
Right.
And there's a lot of information. It's just how much volume do you want to deal with, and what do you think you can chunk down that the kids can consume? And the kids can't, on back to back, they're not going to consume a lot of information, and you want them to play fast.
Yeah. Which probably goes back to how important practice is and focusing on what you can control, and that is whatever your offensive and defensive schemes are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's just so much muscle memory in this
Yeah.
game. You got to let the kids be themselves.
Yeah. So if we were to go down memory lane, this is your third state title as coach at Ames High, as head coach of Ames High, and the other two came in 2009 and 2010, and those were, some are arguing, some of the best high school teams that the state of Iowa has ever seen. I know you've heard this. This is with Harrison Barnes and Doug McDermott. You went 2 years, didn't lose a game during those seasons. How intense were those years? You had to have taken some time to think about those seasons?
Well, yeah, those years were something else.
Yeah.
We got upset in 7-8
Okay.
in a sub-state final when Creekmore hit a last-second shot. We didn't get over to the tournament. That just kind of added to the expectations or pressure maybe. But those 2 years were really intense. I thought the kids handled it extremely well.
Yeah.
But it's hard to put into words. And
I can't imagine.
I'm very thankful it ended the way it ended.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Doug and Harrison. That team that won at 9, I mean, you had Boo Boo Paulo, you had Jesse Pritchard, you had Riley Stuvey, you had Ryan McGowan, you had Crandall, you had James Kohler. I'm not going to get into the debate of what the best team was.
No, I know that's not your job.
But it was a special group of kids, and fortunately it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
No, you don't.
On a bad day.
Yeah.
Things could have went south, and the good news is, I mean, it worked out 2 years in a row. I think they went 56-0.
Yep.
And it was a special time.
It was almost on another level, though. I mean, it's every year you have the number one team in the state, or the top couple teams in the state. At that time, they were the number one team in the nation. And especially going into that senior year, you had won the state title, and now you have, seniors with Harris. And I would imagine that the pressure ramped up even more during that final season, that senior season for that crew.
Yeah, absolutely. You're bringing back some memories as you ask the questions. And it wasn't just the pressure of the games, not as much social media back then.
Yeah.
People had to be there in person to do interviews, practices. It was tough to just operate on a daily basis, and then trying to keep the kids focused at the task at hand. At times, it almost seemed impossible. Thankfully, we kind of cut it down that the press could come in one day a week. Let's get it done, and try to focus on the task at hand. And then every time we traveled, it was kind of like the circus coming to town. It was tough to get in. We needed support from host sites. to get in and out of locker rooms and then leaving the same type of thing. It was a very unique situation.
So to talk about like the media, it's obviously locally we have the Ames Tribune in town, we have the Des Moines Register locally, there's television in town, but we're talking about national media at times. I remember one of those games was on ESPN. So a high school game being played on ESPN that year. And actually, I was in attendance during that game. I wasn't in this position, but I lived in Ames, and I came to that game, and it was packed. It was crazy. And then when you counter that, so you talk about, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and then you counter that with the fact that these, 17, 18-year-old students still have to go to, history class and English class during the day. It's an odd balance to consider.
It really was. It really was. I can still remember the discussion talking with Judge Johnston and our AD at the time. Hey, ESPN has contacted us. They'd like to do a game with you and Waukegan. And the matchup obviously was Harrison, Jeremy, Richmond.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, great. What, ESPN 3, the Deuce? What do you? He said, no. This is going to be on the ESPN.
Yeah.
And the excitement, the build-up, it was awesome. It was a terrific turnout. Thankfully, we played really well. A number of kids had a great night. They played some of their best basketball against a really good Waukegan team. And just the daily, and kids still got to be kids.
Yeah, right.
But like I said before, it's hard to put into words. But it was a very unique experience. I'm certainly fortunate that I got to go through it.
Yeah.
I'm glad it ended well, and I think our community and our school really enjoyed what was happening at that time as well.
So there's some funny stories that Tommy Birch just recorded on going into the tournament this season, kind of looked back as well. I mean, at that time, with Harrison Barnes being so highly recruited, the number one recruit in the nation, not just the state, in the nation. So, there's Mike Krzyzewski in town, Roy Williams, Bill Self. Part of that story that Tommy did talked about how, there's practice going on and Judge would be walking around with one of these coaches as one of them was in the gym, watching. And then there was a really funny story about you arriving to work really early and you flip on the lights to the gymnasium and Bill Self is sitting there. Just how I mean, I know we keep saying these words, but it's bonkers. It was just a crazy time.
Yeah, it was. That's a true story, by the way. When Harrison was a junior, we were just starting two-a-days. So we arrive. It's probably 6 o'clock in the morning. We turn the lights on to get ready to start practice, and over in the corner, seated is Danny Manning and Bill Self. Danny Manning at that time worked on Bill Self's staff.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't remember how they got in, and I'm sure I asked them. But back then, staffs would come and they would spend the entire day.
Yeah.
So like they came in, and Danny Manning spent the day and came back that night, and Carolina did the same.
Yeah.
And it was something else. And but I will say Judge Johnston, I thought, did a remarkable job of helping manage that situation that was not easy to do at times. But it was an experience.
How did you support this? At the time they're kids, they're obviously adults now. But how did you support the students at that time, the players? I mean, Harrison. I mean, all of the players. What steps did you keep to kind of keep them, just kind of focused? Like, you got schoolwork, we got practice, there's all of this going on. It's a lot.
It is. We tried to keep things as normal as we could.
Yeah.
Like we said, just to keep the press off all the kids' backs, we had the one night, and that's the only night that the press would be allowed. And then the rest of the time, we just tried to keep media out of the building as much as possible, keep the kids on their academics. And when we traveled, we tried to limit exposure from everybody. And hopefully that helped the kids a little bit. But I thought, all in all, the kids themselves did a remarkable job because they had so many people pulling at them, so many distractions, and their families.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that starts with probably Harrison and Shirley. I mean, I don't know too many kids that could have went through that in Iowa. Such a fishbowl, because there's so few people.
Yeah.
And he managed that extremely well, as did the other kids and their families.
How cool is it to see? And we're talking about these two from that area, but there are others as well that go on to really do great things, both athletically and otherwise. When you look at Doug at the time, he was not as sought after, but then goes on to be one of the greatest collegiate players to ever play, at college, and now has a wonderful NBA career and is continuing to play in the NBA at a high level. How does that make you feel when you see them on ESPN, or you can check out one of the games and watch it, and to know that you are very formidable in not only their basketball, coming up in basketball, but just developing them as an individual.
Well, as far as seeing them on TV, I think I'm a little spoiled because you just kind of, you're used to it now. You check it every day, how the Spurs do, how Sacramento do.
Yep.
So it's kind of commonplace. It's neat. I mean, it's pretty cool to think about what has transpired, where they've gone. The funny thing about Doug is all these coaches came through.
Yeah.
And nobody really batted an eye at Doug. And I remember, you'd ask, he's pretty close, isn't he? What do you think? I mean, he's a heck of a player.
Yeah.
And, we just don't think he can keep up defensively, or he can't do this. And
talk about proving everyone wrong.
Yeah,
holy smokes.
And I think at the time when Doug made a decision, he decided on UNI.
Yep.
Creighton at the time, Dana Altman asked him. I could have it wrong, but I'm pretty sure he asked him to redshirt for a year. And he may even was asked to pay his own way for that first redshirt year. And then it worked out that Greg changed jobs, and I think even Greg wanted to redshirt Doug. And something happened. They had a scrimmage, I believe, with Colorado, at Colorado, and they had some illness, some injuries, and they said, let's suit Doug for this one.
Yeah.
And at halftime of that scrimmage, Doug had like 28. He said, maybe we ought to think about holding on to that red shirt and letting him play. Jeez. And then the rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, just him alone, I did a quick little research. I mean, 5th all-time collegiate scorer, National Player of the Year, Missouri Valley Player of the Year. He's All-American. Just at Creighton, he did all of these things. And then again, like, we already mentioned, went on to a wonderful NBA career for Harrison. I mean, a lot of the same things. Goes off, gets an NBA championship, a gold medal representing USA. And then, and one of the neat things as we go into next year, we're building a brand new high school, and the gymnasium and court will be, named after Harrison Barnes. And so, it kind of brings it in many ways, I would imagine, for you full circle in that, you get those state titles from there. They go off to do these amazing things. And then just to be able to give back to the community. I know that we did some reporting on it when we announced the Harrison Barnes Gymnasium and Court, but Harrison has a tendency to give back to every community that he's lived in. And part of that has been in Ames, but, Golden State, San Francisco, Sacramento. And we're not talking about, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars and time that he gives back to his community. And how do you reflect on that? Just seeing that come full circle and knowing that you're going to be coaching on the court of a player that you coached.
It's pretty neat to see things go full circle.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me earlier today, is that like the epitome of coaching? You get to see your guys play in the league or that type of thing. Really, the funnest part of coaching is seeing like this, things go full circle.
Yeah.
Young men grow up, get their educations, they become fathers, they have careers, they come back, they help their community.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's the best part of coaching, and this is, obviously an unreal example where a young man is able to have that type of success, give back to all these communities in such a strong way. It's going to be really a neat deal to see him come back. And and to play on that floor and to have younger kids kind of start that cycle again themselves.
Yeah.
Play on that floor.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's wonderful for our community. But I was just I was so proud of our community when we did move forward in that direction and name the gymnasium in court in his honor. And the thing that we focused on at the time was the philanthropy that he was doing. I mean, obviously in Ames, he's given money to help support the Miracle Park. He's active in the Boys and Girls Club. But even in other communities that he's lived in the MBA, he gives a lot of time and energy, and has been recognized by the MBA in that regard as well, which I just find to be wonderful. So when we think back in the recent Ames High basketball program, we've spent the last several weeks really focusing on this particular team, and they won the state title, your third state title. We talked about the 09 and 10 teams and how they won state titles. And, in many ways, the recent program history has really revolved around under your tenure. And yet the Ames High basketball program is much longer than that. So as a program, this is the 9th state title, dating back all the way to the 1930s, and then a couple in the 70s, and then 91, which I know you were also around for as well. How does it feel to just be part of that long legacy of success?
Well, it feels really special to me.
Yeah.
And I hope as we look at this and as we talk about it, that it's our state titles.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate. First of all, Wayne Clinton gave me a chance to coach back in 1989. And he and Bud let me follow him around and help a little bit and cut my teeth in coaching. And I've also had a great opportunity to spend time with George Duval, who coached the 73 team.
Yeah.
And, you're around that. You understand the tradition. You know how important it is to players, to parents, to community. And, I'm really proud of what the team, the coaches, everybody's put together over the years.
Yeah.
And I hope the community and the school district just embraces it because it's a special deal.
Yeah.
The numbers that you've mentioned are unique and special to this place in 4A basketball and special to this place only.
Yeah.
And I really look at it as it's ours.
Yeah.
And I hope we all share a little bit of it and continue to build on it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And, and we've done a lot of history work, especially leading into this year, because we do want to celebrate the historic program. And the really neat thing about being able to do that is over the next generations and even decades, they're going to look at this team as something that was special, as the other teams as well. And it's really cool to be able to add 2022 to that list of 8 other state titles.
Oh, it certainly is. And, we'd mentioned the kids before. It's really special for these kids, and I hope it's with them for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I hope this community enjoys seeing a terrific group of kids play.
Well, I hope you do take some time off. I know when we were talking prior to recording, you were already talking about, we're going to get planning for next year as well. I hope you do take some time and find a way to enjoy this season for what it is before you really dive into the next season.
Well, we'll certainly try to take some time. It's tough to do sometimes.
I know.
But it was a lot of fun, and I feel very, very fortunate to have a terrific group of staff members and to get to coach this team and to have success with it. And you know what? I feel pretty fortunate just to be able to be here and part of the Ames High family, the Ames High basketball family.
Man, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Vance, for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.